Here is a psychological experiment that was never supposed to reveal this much about human nature. Researchers at the University of Kentucky gave participants a simple task: complete a word puzzle. But before the puzzle, a confederate in the room made a single dismissive comment about their intelligence. Just one sentence. Casual, almost offhand. The result? Participants who were insulted scored dramatically lower on the puzzle, not because they became less intelligent, but because a portion of their mental bandwidth was now devoted to processing the insult, to replaying it, to managing the emotional aftermath of 12 words spoken by a stranger they would never see again. One comment. Stranger. Measurable cognitive impairment. Now think about what is happening in your life. Not in a laboratory with a stranger, but in your real world, with real people you see daily, whose words you carry home, whose dismissals you replay at 2 a.m., whose disrespect has quietly colonized territory inside your own mind that should belong to you. How much of your mental bandwidth, right now, today, is occupied by something someone said to you? A comment from a coworker, a dismissal from someone you respected, a public slight that still sits in your chest like a stone, even though you told yourself you were over it. Here is what the Stoics understood 2,000 years before that psychology study was conducted. Disrespect only has the power you allocate to it. And the moment you stop allocating, the moment you master the art of ignoring what was designed to wound you, you get all of that bandwidth back, all of that clarity, all of that peace. 10 rules, ancient wisdom, the complete architecture of a mind that disrespect simply cannot reach. Let's build it. Rule 1. Disrespect is a self-portrait, not a mirror. The first and most foundational rule of ignoring disrespect is also the most psychologically precise. What someone says about you tells you almost nothing about you. It tells you almost everything about them. This is not a comforting platitude. This is a neurological and psychological reality. When a person chooses to respond to your presence, your work, your choices, or your character with dismissal or hostility, that choice is the product of their internal state, their frustrations, their insecurities, their unresolved wounds and unexamined fears. The specific words they select, the particular angles of attack they choose, are a map of their own psychological terrain, drawn in real time, handed to you as though it were about you. It is not about you. Think about the last person who disrespected you. Really examine it. What was happening in their life? What pressures were they under? What do they do habitually to people they feel threatened by, or irritated with, or simply in a position of power over? Because people who direct disrespect at others are doing so consistently, not uniquely at you. You encountered a behavior that was already running in them long before you showed up. Epictetus, who had lived through every form of disrespect the ancient world could produce, distilled this into one of his most powerful observations. No one can harm you without your consent. Not because harm doesn't happen in the world, but because the harm that lives in an insult has to be assembled inside you before it can affect you. The assembly is yours. The components are theirs. When someone disrespects you, you are holding a self-portrait of a person in pain. It may be framed as a statement about you. It may use your name, reference your work, target your choices. But the artist, the psychology behind the brushstroke, is entirely theirs. Look at it clearly, set it down, and walk away from an exhibition that was never about you. Rule 2. Words are weightless until you weigh them. This rule requires a level of philosophical honesty that is genuinely difficult and genuinely transformative. A word is, at its most fundamental level, a sound. Compression and rarefaction of air molecules that travel as waves into the structure of your ear and become electrical signals in your auditory cortex. That is it. That is all it is, in the physical world. Sound waves. Nothing more. The weight, the sting, the shame, the anger, the 3 sleepless nights. None of that is in the word. None of it traveled through the air with the sound wave. All of it was generated inside you, by you, through the process of interpretation. You received the signal and you built the meaning. And the meaning you built is entirely a product of your own psychological history. Your sensitivities, your past wounds, your beliefs about yourself and about what this person's opinion is worth. This is what Marcus Aurelius was pointing at when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Not poetic resignation, a precise psychological instruction. The event, the word spoken, is outside you and beyond your control. The meaning you make of them is inside you and entirely within your control. These are 2 completely different things, and most people treat them as one. The practice this rule demands is simple, but not easy. When disrespectful words arrive, pause before you interpret. Hold the raw event, the sounds, the expression, the behavior, and ask yourself, what am I about to add to this? What weight am I preparing to attach? And more importantly, does this deserve that weight? Often, far more often than feels intuitive in the heat of the moment, the answer is no. The weight you were about to add would have come entirely from you, been carried entirely by you, and caused damage entirely to you. While the person who delivered the sound waves moved on with their day. Stop weighing what was sent weightless. The scales are yours. Use them deliberately. Rule 3. Step behind the glass. From victim to observer. There is a psychological shift available to you in any moment of disrespect that fundamentally changes your relationship to what is happening. Psychologists call it decentering. Stoics called it the view from above. And it works like this. Instead of being inside the experience, feeling the sting, the heat, the personal injury, you step behind glass. You observe the scene as though you are watching it happen to someone else. You see the person delivering the disrespect. You see their body language, their energy, the need behind the behavior. You see yourself receiving it. And from that observational distance, you ask the question not of a wounded participant, but of a curious analyst. What is actually happening here? What psychological dynamic is this? What does this behavior reveal about this person's internal state? This is not dissociation. You are not disconnecting from the experience. You are changing your relationship to it. From automatic emotional participant to deliberate, analytical observer. And that shift does something remarkable. It moves you from a position of vulnerability to a position of understanding. From someone being acted upon to someone who is watching, assessing, and choosing. The psychological root of most disrespect is identifiable and almost always unglamorous. Control needs. The person feels powerless in some area and is attempting to establish dominance through diminishment. Projection. They see in you something they dislike in themselves and attack it in the external world because they cannot face it internally. Insecurity in performance. They are threatened by your work, your presence, or your progress, and are attempting to protect themselves through preemptive undermining. None of these roots are about you. All of them are about the person standing in front of you, acting out an interior drama that was written long before you entered the scene. Step behind the glass. Become the observer. Watch the drama with clear eyes. And notice how little the glass allows the temperature to reach you. Rule 4. Strip the labels. See the event bare. Your brain is a labeling machine. With extraordinary speed and almost zero conscious input, it attaches emotional labels to everything it encounters. Safe, threatening, insulting, humiliating, unfair. These labels arrive so fast and feel so true that most people never question whether the label is accurate or whether it is serving them. Cognitive reframing, the evidence-based psychological practice at the heart of this rule, is the skill of catching those labels before they calcify into reality and asking, is this label accurate? Is it the only available interpretation? Is it the most useful one? When someone speaks to you dismissively in a meeting, your brain labels it. Disrespect. Attack. I am being undermined. That label generates a corresponding emotional response, defensiveness, anger, hurt, which generates a corresponding behavioral impulse, retaliate, withdraw, spiral. The whole sequence runs in seconds and feels entirely involuntary. But the label was a choice, an automatic, habitual, unconscious choice. But a choice, and it can be interrupted. The practice of objective observation asks you to describe the event without emotional language before attaching any interpretation. Not, she disrespected me in front of everyone. That is already a label loaded with personal injury. Instead, she spoke sharply and dismissed my point before I finished speaking. That is the bare event. That is what actually happened in the external world. From the bare event, you have interpretive options. Maybe she was under pressure and it had nothing to do with you. Maybe there is a pattern here worth addressing calmly. Maybe this is behavior that requires a boundary to be set. All of these are available from the bare event. None of them are available from inside the emotional label, because the label closes down interpretive space the moment it attaches. Strip the labels. See what actually happened. And from that clarity, decide, consciously, deliberately, what it means and what, if anything, it requires from you. Rule 5. The pause is where your power lives between the disrespect and your response. There is a gap. For most people, that gap is so small it is functionally non-existent. The stimulus lands and the reaction fires in what feels like a single continuous motion. But the gap is real, and inside it lives the entirety of your freedom. Neuroscience has confirmed what the Stoics practiced philosophically. In the first 2 to 3 seconds after an emotional stimulus, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational judgment, long-term perspective, and values-based decision-making, is running at reduced capacity. The amygdala has taken temporary precedence, and the responses generated in that window are the products of your most primitive, least considered processing. The pause technique is simply this: impose a deliberate delay before any response to anything that provokes you. 3 seconds minimum, more if possible. During that pause, you are not composing a comeback. You are not suppressing emotion. You are simply creating enough temporal distance for your best thinking to re-enter the room. Marcus Aurelius described this as the space where the rational mind reasserts itself over the reactive one. He practiced it so consistently that, by the accounts of those who knew him, he became genuinely difficult to provoke. Not because he felt nothing, but because the gap between feeling and acting had been stretched, through practice, into something wide enough to be navigated with wisdom rather than closed with impulse. Ask yourself during that pause, What is the wisest response here? What would the person I am trying to become do in this moment? Does this require any response at all? Very often, the pause itself is the answer. Not because you have nothing to say, but because what you have to say, on reflection, is not worth the cost of saying it. Rule 6. Run it through the 5-year filter. Before you allow a disrespectful comment to occupy your mind, your mood, or your behavior for longer than it took to be delivered, run it through this single psychological filter. Will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, and it almost always is, follow up with the more immediate version. Will this matter in 5 hours? This is not minimizing. This is calibration. It is the cognitive practice of placing a present irritation into its accurate temporal context and discovering, with almost universal consistency, that the thing that feels enormous right now will feel like nothing in the span of time it actually occupies. Seneca wrote extensively about the human tendency to experience temporary discomforts as permanent conditions. We feel insulted, and our nervous system responds, as though the insult has permanently altered something, as though the verdict delivered in those words is now a fixed feature of our reality. But it isn't. It was a moment, a single event in an enormous life. And the suffering we experience in response is almost always wildly disproportionate to the actual size of what happened. The 5-year filter recalibrates that proportion. It is the psychological equivalent of pulling the camera back until the thing you were standing too close to reveals its actual dimensions, which are almost always smaller than they felt from inside them. Carry this filter as a standing practice, not just for the large disrespects, but for the small ones. The passing comment, the dismissive tone, the eye roll that you cataloged and filed. Run every one of them through the filter, and release everything that doesn't survive it, which will be almost everything. Your mental bandwidth is finite and extraordinary. Stop spending it on things that will not matter by dinner. Rule 7. Silence is the language of the undefeatable. There is a social assumption so deeply embedded in modern culture that most people have never thought to question it. Responding to disrespect is a sign of self-respect. That staying silent means you had nothing to say, or worse, that you accepted the verdict. The Stoics would dismantle this assumption completely. And once it is dismantled, silence becomes not the absence of power, but its fullest expression. When someone disrespects you and you respond, even brilliantly, even with a comeback that lands perfectly, you have confirmed one thing above all others. Their behavior had enough significance to compel your reaction. You have validated the tactic. You have demonstrated that the lever works. And you have, in the most literal sense, given them exactly what they were reaching for. Your engagement, your energy, your visible disturbance. But when you say nothing, when you meet their hostility with the kind of settled, unperturbed silence that communicates absolute interior stability, you have denied them the only thing they were actually after. And in doing so, you have communicated something that no response could. You do not have the standing to disturb me. That is not passivity. That is command. The command of a person so settled in their own sense of self that external attempts to unseat it register as nothing more than background noise. Practice this silence deliberately. Let it become your first response to disrespect rather than your last resort. Feel the pull toward reaction. It will be there. It is natural. And choose stillness instead. Not the stillness of someone who is suppressing something, but the stillness of someone who has nothing to prove. The undefeatable person is not the one with the best comeback. They are the one who requires no comeback at all. Rule 8. Offer no surface. Let it pass through. In physics, resistance amplifies force. The harder a surface, the more violently energy bounces back from it. But a surface that offers no resistance, that absorbs or redirects rather than reflects, dissipates the force entirely. This is the strategic principle at the heart of this rule. When disrespect arrives, offer no surface for it to land on. In practice, this means refusing to provide the emotional engagement that transforms a hostile act into a conflict. Not through forced calm or performed indifference. Those are reactions too, just quieter ones. Through genuine non-investment, through the practiced internal reality that this person's assessment of you has no currency in the economy of your self-worth. When the disrespect arrives and you offer nothing, no visible hurt, no defensive posture, no spike of energy that signals it landed, something interesting happens. The aggression has nowhere to go. It hangs in the air between you, unsupported, and then it falls. Back to the person who launched it. And they are left holding what they threw, with no evidence that it reached you, in the full discomfort of their own uncollected hostility. Calm eye contact is the physical expression of this principle, not a stare designed to intimidate. A steady, clear, untroubled gaze that communicates without a word. I see what you are doing. I am not moved by it, and I am not going anywhere. The eyes do not widen with hurt. They do not narrow with anger. They simply hold, with the particular quality of stillness that belongs to someone who has nothing to fear from this moment. This is a learnable skill. It is built the same way all character is built, in the small moments, through consistent practice, until it becomes the default rather than the effort. Rule 9. Build your self-image on bedrock, not on borrowed ground. The reason disrespect wounds us, the real reason, beneath all the philosophy and the psychology, is simple. Somewhere inside us, on some level, we are looking for external confirmation of our own worth. And when what arrives is not confirmation but dismissal, the architecture shakes. The Stoic remedy is architectural. It does not teach you to need less confirmation by white-knuckling it through the desire. It teaches you to build your self-image on a foundation that does not require external confirmation to remain standing, one that is composed entirely of materials that belong to you, that cannot be revoked, revised, or withheld by anyone operating outside of you. What are those materials? Your values. The principles you have consciously chosen to live by and that you examine honestly to see whether you are living them. Your commitments, the ones you have made to yourself, privately, without audience, and kept. Your character, the quality of who you are when no one is watching, in the decisions that cost something and in the moments that reveal what you are made of under pressure. These things cannot be taken from you by a dismissive comment or public slight. They were not given to you by praise, and they cannot be removed by criticism. They are internal, earned, and entirely yours. When your identity is built here, not on what people think of you, but on what you know to be true about yourself, disrespect stops being a threat and starts being irrelevant. Not because you have become cold or defensive, but because the thing it was aimed at is simply not located where the aim assumed it was. The arrow was sent to a target that has already been moved inside, beyond reach. Boundaries, built from this foundation, carry a completely different quality than boundaries built from reactivity. They are not walls thrown up in anger. They are clear, calm, non-negotiable communications about what you will and will not allow in your space. Delivered without heat, without apology, without the need for the other person's agreement. They protect your peace, not by fighting for it, but by simply, consistently, requiring it. Rule 10. Lock in your mission. Make the noise irrelevant. The final architectural principle of inner peace in the face of disrespect is perhaps the most practical and the most powerful. When you are sufficiently locked into what you are building, what others say about you loses its ability to compete for your attention. This is not about being too busy to care. It is about having something so meaningful, so genuinely important to you, so aligned with what you believe your life is for, that the opinion of someone who is not contributing to that thing simply does not register as significant input. Think about the people in history who changed the world despite extraordinary levels of public disrespect. Every person who ever built something genuinely new was told, loudly and repeatedly, and often by people with credentials, that they were wrong, misguided, or delusional. They were dismissed, mocked, and publicly disrespected. And the ones who kept building, who went on to prove those dismissals catastrophically wrong, were not people with thicker skin. They were people with a clearer mission. A mission so specific, so compelling, so entirely theirs, that the noise of those who didn't understand it became genuinely, structurally irrelevant. Your mission does not have to be world-changing. It has to be yours. It has to be real. It has to be something you wake up genuinely caring about. Something that pulls your attention and your energy so completely that the small hostilities of small people simply cannot compete. This is the Stoic concept of Telos. Purpose, the end toward which a life is directed. When the Telos is clear, everything that does not serve it becomes background. And most disrespect, when held up against a clear and meaningful purpose, reveals itself for exactly what it is: someone else's noise, reaching for relevance in a life that is already fully occupied. Lock in your mission, do the work, and let the noise remain what it was always going to be. Background. 10 rules. 5 frameworks. 1 truth underneath all of them. Your inner peace is not at the mercy of other people's behavior. It is entirely, always, and only at the mercy of your response to it. The insult that seemed so devastating was a self-portrait, not a verdict. The words that felt so heavy were weightless until you weighed them. The silence you chose was not weakness. It was the language of the undefeatable. The mission you locked into made the noise irrelevant. And the decision you made every morning before the world could ask anything of you. To refuse offense, to choose compassion, to protect your peace as the non-negotiable foundation of everything else. That decision is the Stoic art in its fullest expression. 2,000 years ago, men and women who faced adversity that would break most modern minds chose this practice. They chose it not because it was easy, but because it was true. Because they understood, in the bones and in the philosophy and in the daily evidence of their lives, that a person who has mastered their inner world cannot be touched by the chaos of the outer one. That mastery is available to you. Not someday. Not after the difficult people in your life change or leave. Right now. With the next disrespect that arrives, which is coming, and which you are now prepared for in a way you were not an hour ago. Ignore what was designed to wound you. Reclaim every inch of peace that was never theirs to take. If this gave you something real, share it. Someone in your life is carrying an insult right now that doesn't deserve the weight they are giving it. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 10 rules is going into your practice today. And subscribe, because this is the work. The deep, daily, philosophy-forged work of becoming someone the world cannot rattle. Your peace is waiting. Go get it back. See you in the next one.